Pricing your products wrong can kill your business. When I first started in business, I did things completely backwards. Here's an example. I looked at all the different types of similar products on the market. I chose the average between all of them, and that was my sale price. It was arbitrary. I did no calculations. I didn't know my numbers and how much it cost to make each product. I wasn't aware of how big of a factor shipping played. I didn't calculate things such as value-added tax and labor. I didn't make any money when selling my products because there wasn't enough margin built in to cover all of the costs that we don't always think about. This calculator is meant to solve that challenge by giving you a framework and calculations to figure out how to best price your product, either based on profit or margin. Let's talk about it. The correct way to price your products is based on your desired margin. Margin is the percentage of difference between the profit that you make and the sale price of the item. For example, if you look at the calculation for margin, you'll see it's C19 divided by C18. We're going to take the actual profit we make off this item and we're going to divide it by the selling price. But how do we figure out the profit? Because in order to figure out the profit, we first have to determine our costs. In this situation, we're trying to figure out our cost of goods sold, also known as our COGS. This is where we included the number on the spreadsheet. The cost of goods sold is the total amount of money that it takes in order to get a product available to make a sale. It does not include shipping it to the customer. It does not include all of the tooling and the molds and the equipment. The only items that should be included in your cost of goods sold or your COGS figures should be the actual per unit cost of all the ingredients that make it come together. Don't worry, I'll explain more. Once we determine our cost of goods, we can then figure out our profit, which will then allow us to figure out our margin. Let's break it down a little bit further. There's a few big categories that go into your cost of goods. The first is your raw materials. The second is your packaging costs. The third is your labor cost. And fourth is your shipping in costs. Okay, not to be confused with shipping out to your customers, but shipping in, receiving it. If you look over here at the total cost per unit, it's the same figure as the cost of goods. And that's because they're one and the same. But if you look at how the total cost per unit is broken down, you can see that it's the sum of all three of these right here: raw materials, packaging, labor, and shipping in. But in order to figure out each one of those, we have to figure out our pricing per unit, or our unit costs. Let's talk about that real quick. This is an example that I've put together of a real product that we've priced in our business. The product name is Maker's Magic. Feel free to look it up. It's an awesome product. Now, there's a few things that go into Maker's Magic. Maker's Magic is a craft glue, sealer, and decoupage medium that works on a wide array of craft projects. So there's a few ingredients we have to put together in order to make this liquid. And that's listed here in the ingredients section. All of those are raw materials. But I can't just look at the PO and write down that number because we wouldn't be accurate. So what we need to do is figure out our unit costs. Here's a good example of what I mean by unit costs. If you have to order 10,000 jars at a time and it costs you $6,500 to order those jars, we know that it's 65 cents per jar. That's exactly what we're doing for every item and every ingredient that goes into our product. That's how we break it down. For example, I know that if I order this ingredient number 1 in bulk, I can make 1,026 units from it. So I take the cost of that entire batch and I divide it by 1,026. Now I know that it cost me $1.41 in ingredient number 1 to make this product. Let me give you another example. I know that one person with one machine can fill 180 units per hour. I also know that I'm paying them $15 per hour. So if I take that $15 and I divide it by 180, it will give me my labor cost per unit for filling. Then we also have to take into account the labeling cost as well. And this is how you get the actual price per unit for each one of your products. I cannot stress to you how important it is to know these figures. This is the process that you need to follow for each one of these categories for your product: raw materials, packaging, labor, and shipping in. Now, if you don't want to get that granular, that's okay, because down here on the bottom left, we've created a simple calculator for you. With the simple calculator, all you have to do is put in the total cost per unit for each one of these categories. You don't need to break it down as granular as I did before. You can use a ballpark figure. I don't recommend the simple calculator, but it will at least give you some simple back of the napkin math. The best way to calculate the costs of your product is using the Advanced tab. I went ahead and I broke down some of the typical categories that are included in each one of these. Now, some of them are going to be completely irrelevant to you. Some of them aren't going to be. Feel free to delete and fill out whatever you want on this sheet. Please edit anything in the green. Let's go back to our example. Once we have determined our unit cost for the materials, the packaging, the labor, and the shipping in, we can figure out the totals of each. This is important because it can show you where your product is the most expensive, and it will allow you to visualize where most of the money goes when building this item. For some of you, that's not going to be important. For people like me who have various unit costs, I can say, wow, most of our cost is in ingredients right here. What can we do to lower the price of this ingredient? Which will directly affect your cost, which will directly affect your margin. Starting to make sense? Once we've broken down all of our costs, we're going to get a total, and all of that total is going to show up here in our total cost per unit, which is the same as our cost of goods. But how do we determine our price based on our cost of goods? If that was the only number we had, could we figure it out? The answer is yes. Let me tell you why. Industry standards, best practices of all the e-commerce brands that I've worked with, studied, and consulted with live and die by their margin. Margin, like we've talked about, is how much money you're actually making on the sale of a product. In order to achieve the best margin possible, you want to price your product at least 5 times your cost of goods. I know that sounds crazy. I used to think that if I just doubled it once or twice, I would be okay. But I wasn't building in enough margin to pay all my employees, cover shipping, cover taxes, and all the other overhead that goes into running a business. Not to mention customer acquisition costs. They're only going up. We have to plan for that. So you'll see right here that we have a cost of goods times 4 and a cost of goods times 5, just to show you what it would look like. If we were to go with cost of goods times 5, I would now input my selling price as $19.99 so that I could cover it. If our price is $19.99 and our profit is $16.12, that gives us an 80% margin. 80% margin or greater is what you want to strive for when building an e-commerce or a D2C company, because there's a lot of costs. Let's take a look at some more of the best practices. You can edit your price to achieve your desired margin if margin is the factor that's more important to you than profit. So feel free to play with the price up and down. If we price this at $29.99, you'll see that our margin goes up to 87%. Our CFO or a consultant has told us, hey, in order to make a profit, all of these items need to have a margin of at least 85%. You'll now know how to calculate that. Or if someone comes to you and says, hey, look, we can't sell this product unless it has a profit of at least $14 because it costs us 10 to get a customer and 3 to ship. That's break even. That's bare minimum. You can use this calculator, fill it out. So if we wanted to achieve a profit of $14, we need to play with the price. There's 19, there's 18. So now I know that the cheapest I could sell this product for is $18 while achieving a $14 profit. Here's how we get to that 85% margin. We'll keep playing with it, maybe 25. Okay, great. So if somebody comes to you and says, we have to be at an 84% margin for this product for it to make sense, what do we need to price it at? Your answer is $25. Next thing I want to go over with you is your profits. Your profits must cover your shipping to the customer. Now, I understand that there are some cases where you will lose money on the first purchase and make it up in LTV or on the back end or recurring purchases, but that's not what we're talking about here. Your profit needs to cover the cost to ship to the customer. That's built in. But cost of shipping to the customer varies depending on the service that you're using, the packaging size, how you're shipping it to them, what they've chosen in terms of expedited or normal, and so they're not included in the actual cost of goods. Shipping to the customer is included on the shipping line item for your profit and loss. In addition, we are not going to include costs for tooling and equipment. Tooling and equipment costs typically go on the research and development line on your profit and loss or on the equipment line. They are not built into your cost of goods because they are not repeatable costs that are involved in creating the product. And if we did, it would throw off our financials and it wouldn't allow us to properly project. That said, cost of goods times 4 is okay. At the very least, try to get there. But cost of goods times 5 is optimal. So, let's say you have the calculator and you want to build it all out on your own. Here's how I would do it. I would click over to the Simple tab, get a feel for it, break it down in a general way, but when you're ready, click over to the Advanced tab so you can really dig in. Now, the first thing you're going to do is type in your product name, shiny new widget, and you're going to type in your selling price here. You probably have an idea of what your selling price would be. And In fact, I would encourage you to put something in the beginning just to see how close you were. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put $34.95 into the box. The next step for you is to figure out your unit costs. Now, you might have just one part of the product. You might have 20. What I want you to do is focus on breaking down each unit cost and then deleting the cells and the boxes that don't apply to clean it up. Some of these are not going to make sense. You might not have to sticker, wrap, or kit your product, but you might need someone to build it, or you might need someone to print it. And that's why this exists right here. Now, when it comes to shipping costs, you might not have value-added tax. You might not have customs fees. Customs fees are only applied when goods are coming in from overseas into the United States. If everything is made domestically, that'll be zero. Delete it. You might not have to pay taxes on this stuff. Delete it. You might have no import duties, but you might have LTL costs, less than truckload shipping costs, pickup costs, or storage fees. Fill those out. Once everything is filled out completely to the best of your abilities, I want you to delete everything that is not involved. Then I want you to come over here and start playing with the cost of goods multiplier by altering the price only. It's the only thing I want you to change is the green and the yellow. Once you see how it starts to play out and how it starts to work, you will understand how to better price your products and you will be a better business owner because of it. If you're into this kind of stuff, I love helping e-commerce business owners go from 6 figures to 7 figures. It's my wheelhouse because I've done it and I'm going from 7 to 8 right now. If you need more help or you want to connect, reach out to me on Instagram. I love answering DMs with voice memos, and it would just be awesome if we could connect. Otherwise, check out this video next because I think it will be really helpful for you.